The sailor jumped because the ship was already burning. The deck beneath him was turning black. Smoke swallowed the men around him. The heat was so intense that the air itself seemed dangerous to breathe, so he did the only thing that made sense. He threw himself into the sea. Water should have meant safety, but this time the fire was waiting there too. The burning liquid spread across the surface. It clung to wood. It floated over the waves. It turned the water around the ship into a trap. For the men caught in it, there was no easy direction to run. Stay on the ship and burn, jump into the sea and find more fire. This was the terror of Greek fire, a weapon so feared that enemies wrote about it for centuries. A weapon said to roar from bronze tubes, cover the sea in flame, and destroy entire fleets before they could reach the walls of Constantinople. But Greek fire is not only famous because it burned, it is famous because the exact secret behind it disappeared. Today we know enough to understand why it terrified people, but not enough to recreate the original Byzantine weapon with certainty. That is what makes Greek fire so strange. It was real. It was deadly. It helped defend one of the greatest cities in the medieval world, and then the knowledge behind it slipped out of history. So what was Greek fire? Why did it matter? What was actually in it? And why can no one fully recreate the original weapon today? To answer that, we need to begin with one common mistake. Greek fire was not a weapon of ancient Greece. It did not belong to Athens or Sparta. It was not used by hoplites in bronze helmets on classical battlefields. Despite the name, Greek fire was a medieval Byzantine weapon. The Byzantines were the Eastern Roman Empire. Their capital was Constantinople. Their enemies often called them Greeks. They called themselves Romans. And the weapon later known in the West as Greek fire had other names in Byzantine sources: sea fire, liquid fire, Roman fire. These names are important because they place the weapon where it belongs. Not in the world of ancient Greek city-states, but in the desperate medieval struggle for Constantinople. By the 7th century, the Byzantine Empire was under enormous pressure. Its lands had been shrinking. Its enemies were growing stronger. The Umayyad Caliphate had expanded with astonishing speed, taking territory that once belonged to the Romans and threatening the Eastern Mediterranean. If Constantinople fell, the Eastern Roman Empire could collapse with it. The city was almost impossible to ignore. It controlled routes between Europe and Asia. It guarded the Bosporus. Its walls were legendary. Its harbor was strategic, but walls alone could not save it from the sea. An enemy fleet could blockade the city, cut supplies, and support armies outside the walls. Constantinople needed more than stone. It needed a weapon that could break ships before they strangled the city. This is where Greek fire enters the story. The weapon first appears in reliable records in the late 7th century, around the 670s. A Byzantine chronicler later credited a man named Kallinikos or Kallinicus with bringing or improving the weapon. He is described as an engineer or architect from Heliopolis in the region of Syria who came to Constantinople during the Arab conquests. That detail should be treated carefully. Kallinikos may not have invented Greek fire from nothing. Incendiary weapons had existed before. People had used burning pitch, oil, sulfur mixtures, flaming arrows, and fire pots for centuries. The more careful version is that Byzantine sources credit Kallinikos with introducing or improving the weapon at the moment the empire needed it most. He may have perfected an older tradition of fire weapons. He may have helped turn a dangerous mixture into a true military system. That distinction matters. Greek fire was not simply a strange liquid in a jar. It was a complete weapon system, a mixture, a delivery mechanism, special ships, bronze tubes, pressure, ignition, trained crews, secrecy. All of those parts had to work together. Without the mixture, the tubes were useless. Without the tubes, the mixture was just burning liquid. Without trained sailors, the machine could fail. Without secrecy, enemies might copy it. This is why Greek fire was so different from ordinary fire weapons. A clay pot filled with burning material could be thrown. A flaming arrow could set a sail on fire, but Greek fire could be projected. It could be aimed. It could be released from the front of a ship like a stream of flame. The most famous delivery method was the siphon. Byzantine warships called dromons could carry bronze tubes mounted near the prow. The exact machinery is still debated, but the basic idea is clear enough. A pressurized system forced the incendiary liquid through the tube. The mixture was ignited as it left or near the end of the nozzle. To an enemy sailor, it must have looked as if the Byzantine ship was breathing fire. Think about what that meant in a naval battle. Most ships were made of wood. Their rigging, sails, and oars could burn. Men were packed together in close quarters. Escape was limited. A ship at sea was already dangerous. Fire made it worse. A single burning deck could become chaos. Men tried to put out flames. Others tried to row. Commanders shouted orders through smoke. Archers and marines struggled to keep formation. Then the fire reached the surface of the water. Accounts describe Greek fire continuing to burn on water. That claim is safe when worded carefully. It does not mean we should say it magically exploded the instant it touched the sea. The stronger and safer point is that it floated, spread, and kept burning on the surface. For sailors, that was terrifying enough. Water was usually the place you went to escape fire. Greek fire challenged that instinct. If burning liquid covered the sea around the ship, the choice became unbearable: stay on the vessel or jump into fire. That is why the weapon's psychological effect may have been as powerful as its physical damage. Greek fire attacked morale. It turned water into danger. It made enemy ships fear closing the distance. It gave the Byzantine Navy a weapon that could break a fleet before boarding even began, and the weapon came with sound and smoke. Some accounts describe noise, pressure, and thick smoke. Even if later descriptions grew dramatic, the basic scene is easy to understand. A bronze tube at the front of a Byzantine ship, men pumping or operating machinery behind it, fire roaring outward, smoke rolling across the water, enemy sailors watching the flame move toward them. This was not a clean weapon. It was panic in mechanical form. Greek fire became famous because it appeared at moments when Constantinople was in danger. During the Arab siege of Constantinople in the 600s and 70s, Byzantine forces used the weapon against the attacking fleet. The city survived. Greek fire was not the only reason, but it helped give the Byzantines a crucial advantage at sea. A generation later, during the siege of 717 to 718, Constantinople faced another massive threat. Again, the Byzantine Navy used Greek fire against enemy ships. Again, the weapon became part of the city's survival story. These sieges mattered because they were not small border fights. They were moments when the future of the Byzantine Empire was at stake. If the city fell, the map of the medieval world could have changed. Greek fire became part of the reason Constantinople endured. The weapon was also used against internal enemies. In the revolt of Thomas the Slav in the 9th century, imperial forces used Greek fire against rebel ships. A famous illustration in the Madrid Skylitz's manuscript shows Byzantine ships projecting fire toward an enemy fleet. That image has become one of the most important visual references for Greek fire. It is not a modern fantasy painting. It is a medieval image showing how later Byzantines remembered the weapon. Then came the Rus' attack of 941. The Rus came by sea, moving toward Constantinople with a large fleet. To them, Byzantine ships may have looked old or weak, but the Byzantines still had the weapon that terrified sailors. Greek fire was used against the Rus fleet, and later accounts describe the shock of men facing fire that seemed almost impossible to escape. The details in medieval sources can be dramatic, but the larger point is clear. Greek fire was not remembered as ordinary fire. It was remembered as something frightening, unnatural, and decisive. That reputation became part of its power. An enemy who had heard stories about Greek fire would enter battle already afraid of it. A weapon can kill with flame. It can also win before it is fired, by making men dread what will happen when the ships close in. But what was actually in Greek fire? This is where the mystery begins. The exact formula was never written down in a way that allows us to recreate it with certainty. Modern historians and scientists have strong theories. They do not have the original recipe. The strongest theory is that Greek fire was based on petroleum, likely naphtha or a related oil. That makes sense. Petroleum-based substances can float on water and keep burning. They can cling to surfaces. They can create the kind of effect described in accounts. The Byzantines also had access, directly or indirectly, to regions where natural petroleum seeped from the ground. This does not solve the whole mystery, but it gives us the most likely foundation. To make the mixture stickier and longer burning, resin or pitch may have been added. Pine resin is often suggested. Sulfur is also possible as an additive, since sulfur appears in other incendiary traditions. Then there is quicklime. Quicklime is famous because it reacts with water and produces heat. For a long time, people suggested that quicklime might explain the claim that Greek fire ignited on contact with water. But this theory is debated. Many scholars are cautious about it. Quicklime may not fit well with the known delivery system. It could have created practical problems in a pressurized siphon. So the safest wording is this: quicklime has been proposed as one theory, but it should not be treated as confirmed. The same caution applies to saltpeter or gunpowder theories. Those should be avoided for the classic Byzantine period. Greek fire was not gunpowder. The best explanation is a petroleum-based incendiary mixture, probably made more effective with additives, delivered through specialized equipment by trained crews. That may sound less magical than legend. It is also more impressive. A magic substance only requires belief. Greek fire required engineering. The Byzantines had to control the mixture, store it, move it, heat it or prepare it, pressurize it, project it, ignite it safely, use it on wooden ships without burning their own fleet, train crews to operate it under battle conditions, protect the secret from enemies and even from their own people. That is why Greek fire should never be reduced to a recipe. The recipe was only part of the weapon, the system was the real secret, and the system was guarded carefully. Byzantine imperial tradition treated the weapon as something that must not be shared. Later texts frame its secrecy almost as a sacred duty. The message was clear: this weapon belonged to the empire. It was not to be given away. That kind of secrecy makes sense. If enemies copied Greek fire, the Byzantine advantage would vanish. The empire needed the weapon to remain unequal. It had to be frightening, partly because others did not understand it. Secrecy protected the formula. It also deepened the fear. Enemies did not know exactly what they were facing. They knew ships burned. They knew water did not save them. They knew Constantinople survived. The unknown did the rest. But secrecy has a cost. A weapon can be protected so carefully that the knowledge becomes fragile. If the ingredients are known by one group, the siphons by another, the battlefield used by another, and the imperial workshops control the rest, then the system depends on the state that holds it together. When that state weakens, the chain can break. The Byzantine Empire did not disappear overnight. It declined across centuries. It lost territory. It lost resources. It suffered civil wars, invasions, and political crises. The sack of Constantinople in 1204 during the Fourth Crusade shattered the city in a way from which it never fully recovered. The empire survived in reduced form, but much of its old power was gone. Somewhere in that long decline, Greek fire faded. The exact formula disappeared. The specialized knowledge behind the weapon was no longer passed down clearly. The workshops, crews, equipment, and state systems that once made it possible no longer functioned as before. That is why the title says no one can recreate it. Modern science can create incendiary weapons. Modern chemistry can build mixtures that burn on water. Modern experiments can approximate Greek fire's effects, but no one can prove they have recreated the exact Byzantine formula and delivery system. The original secret is gone. What remains is a set of clues, chronicles, military manuals, descriptions of battles, a few images, ingredient theories, experiments, the memory of burning fleets. That is enough to know Greek fire was real. It is not enough to fully recover what the Byzantines knew. This is where myth enters the story. Some myths make Greek fire sound like magic. They say it ignited the instant it touched water. They make it seem like no one understands anything about it. They treat it as a supernatural substance rather than a weapon system. Those claims should be corrected. Greek fire did not need to be magic. It was more frightening because it was practical. It was operated by men, mounted on ships, built by workshops, guarded by emperors, used in specific battles, feared by real enemies. The myth of Greek fire grew because the weapon sat at the edge of what medieval people could explain. Fire was familiar, oil was familiar, ships were familiar. But fire sprayed from a bronze tube across the sea, clinging to water and wood, was something different. It looked like technology crossing into nightmare. That is why the name survived. Greek fire became larger than a weapon. It became a symbol of Byzantine survival, a reminder that Constantinople did not endure only because of stone walls. It endured because of intelligence, engineering, secrecy, and terror. Picture the scene again. An enemy fleet approaches the city. The men aboard expect arrows, stones, spears, maybe fire pots. They do not expect the sea itself to turn against them. Then the Byzantine ships move forward. Bronze tubes point from their prows. Smoke rises. The first stream of flame bursts outward. A ship catches, then another. The surface of the water glows. Men shout through the smoke. Oars stop moving. Formation breaks. The attack loses order. The fleet begins to fear the distance between itself and the Byzantine line. That was the true power of Greek fire. It did not need to destroy every ship. It needed to make the enemy believe every ship could be next. At sea, fear travels quickly. One burning vessel can become a warning to the rest. A commander might order the fleet forward. The sailors might hesitate. They had heard the stories. They had seen the flame. They knew water would not save them. This was warfare aimed at the nerves as much as the hull. Greek fire also tells us something larger about the medieval world. People sometimes imagine the Middle Ages as technically simple: stone walls, iron swords, wooden ships. But Greek fire does not fit that image. It required chemical knowledge, workshop discipline, naval design, military secrecy, and coordinated operation. It was not modern science in the way we use the term today. It was still a remarkable achievement. A medieval empire created a weapon so specialized that its full method did not survive the empire that guarded it. That is why the story is so powerful. A weapon built to save a city became a secret history could not fully recover. The Byzantines kept their enemies from stealing it, but in the end they also kept the future from fully understanding it. There is something haunting about that. Greek fire did not vanish because it failed. It vanished because the world that made it vanished. The ships changed. The empire weakened. The workshops disappeared. The specialists died. The records were incomplete. The exact process stopped moving from one generation to the next. And the weapon that once lit the sea became a mystery. Today, researchers can build reconstructions. They can test petroleum mixtures. They can study old texts. They can examine manuscript images. They can estimate how bronze siphons might have worked. But the original remains out of reach, not because we know nothing, because we know enough to see the shape of the secret but not enough to open it. That is what separates Greek fire from ordinary lost weapons. We do not simply ask what it was. We ask how a weapon so important could be remembered so vividly, yet preserved so incompletely. We know the fear, we know the empire, we know the battles, we know the likely ingredients, we know the sea burned, but the final formula remains missing. The exact machine remains uncertain. The full operating method remains behind a locked door of history. Maybe that is why Greek fire still captures attention. It is not only a story of destruction, it is a story of control. The Byzantines controlled the weapon, they controlled the secret, they controlled who could use it, they controlled how much the outside world knew. For centuries, that secrecy helped protect them. Later, it helped erase the thing they had protected. Greek fire was a weapon of survival. It helped defend Constantinople when the city faced overwhelming danger. It terrified fleets that tried to challenge Byzantine power at sea. It gave the empire a kind of fire its enemies could describe, fear, and remember, but not easily copy. And then, slowly, it slipped away. That is the strange legacy of Greek fire. A weapon powerful enough to burn on water, a secret guarded tightly enough to outlast the men who knew it. A medieval system advanced enough that modern reconstructions still come with uncertainty. The Byzantines built it to keep enemies from their walls. History kept the mystery for itself. The next time someone calls Greek fire a lost medieval weapon, remember what was truly lost. Not just a recipe, not just an ingredient, not just a tube on the front of a ship. What disappeared was the complete system, the mixture, the machine, the training, the workshop knowledge, the imperial secrecy, the exact moment when liquid became flame, and the method that turned the sea into a weapon. Greek fire was real. The fear was real. The formula is gone. And somewhere between the burning water and the missing blueprint, one of the most terrifying secrets of the medieval world still remains unfinished.